This is a Badboy 2019 MZ Magnum mower. 54-inch cut. I bought it brand new. I guess it's almost 7 years old, 6.5 years old now. And the spindles started making a little bit of noise, or I thought they were making noise. And I bought bearings to replace in the spindles several months ago, and just now getting around to doing it. So they do have some issues. All three spindles made noise when you spin them. I've replaced one of the bearings, or two bearings in one spindle, and then I just wanted to make a little video to show what I was doing. I've got a little lift system built in my garage just to lift the front end of the mower, so I've got it off the ground. Impact, whether you use electric or air, impact is the way to go. You're working with pulleys that spin and blades that spin and spindles that spin, and using impact to get those nuts and bolts off is invaluable. So I've already replaced one side, which is this one. Very simple, not a lot to it. I'll show you in a minute how I got the bearings out of the spindle. They are pressed in, but they tap out fairly easily. And then I replaced them, put the spindle back in, and everything's good. So this is kind of what they all sound like right now. I'm sure you can hear that. Of course, that's the, they all three sounded that way. So this is the one that I replaced. And of course, you hear nothing. So again, about 6.5 years old. I have not had a spindle fail. I just simply felt like that I knew they were making a little noise, and I just get ahead of the game, go ahead and rebuild all three of them. And my idlers sound pretty good. I'm not gonna mess with those, but I did want to replace these spindle bearings. And of course, I bought a new belt since I knew I was gonna have to pull it all apart anyway. And anyway, I'll show you in just a minute how I got the spindles apart and replaced the bearings. Okay, this is a spindle removed, and it's got a sleeve. I think you can see that down inside there that kind of goes in between the two bearings. But it is kind of, it's not a perfect tight fit. You can see the bearing does have a seat in each end. So all you've got to do is get that bearing tapped in to its perfect seat and put that spacer in between, and again, tap both bearings to perfect seat, and that's where you want it. This is the pulley that came off the spindle. You just take it off. It does have a keyway that goes in the top of the shaft. So this is the shaft that comes out of it, right? There's your keyway there for your pulley, and then the other end, of course, is for the blade. So it again, all that's pretty simple if you've got an impact. It buzzes right out. All I did at that point was I started with this bearing here, and I laid it on my vise like that, and I stuck a 1/4 inch extension down in here and started tapping that bearing, and it tapped right out. You got to put a little force to it, but it comes out. And then of course I set once I got it flush with the base of the vise, then I've got the jaws separated enough to allow the bearing to come out the bottom in between the jaws, and I just tapped it out. Same on both sides. Pull the spacer out, put the new bearings in, tap them in with the hammer. This one is flush, And again, this one on the bottom is recessed, but it has a seat inside of the spindle housing. So all you do is tap it solid with that seat. Just remember to put your spacer back in there when you put it back together. And that was basically it. Pretty simple. You hear the difference in the two bearings. So you got the bearing that side that was, that was damaged or going bad, and you heard it grind. And then you got the new one over here, and that was about it. Not a whole lot to it. Pretty simple. There's 4 bolts. That spindle's been removed. That's the one I'm working on now. That's the center spindle. There's 4 bolts here that you have to take out to remove the spindle. And of course, you got to take the pulley off the top. And again, the impact wrench is the way to go. You simply hold this, hit it with the impact, and buzz it right off. So if you're trying to do it with a socket and a ratchet or whatever, that may be a little more difficult. But that's it. So you take those off, and I replaced it, replaced the blades, put new blade on it, and that's what the bottom looks like. And again, that's the spindle I'm working on now. Again, the 1/4 inch ratchet or 1/4 inch extension, and then I just hit it on the top, move it around to the next position, and kept hitting it until the bearing comes out. Once the bearing's out, flip it over and do the back side the same way. This is the package of bearings that I bought. Again, I don't know that one from the other. They came off of Amazon. They may be bad, and I may be, having to replace them next week. I don't know, but it was what they had that fit the Badboy. The bearings that come out are made in China, and the ones going back in are made in China. So I think that they'll be good for what we got to go do, and I'll get this one done and get it back together. Okay, that one's out. So basically you can see what's going on there. I just used that 1/4 inch ratchet or 1/4 inch extension to drive that bearing out. And then I'll get this one out the same way. I'll just turn this over, put it in the vise, and hit it with the extension, and it'll drive that bearing right out of there. So this is the bearing that I just took out. All right, it is a sealed bearing, but when you start driving it out with the extension and the hammer, it knocks that seal cover off of both sides. But that's it. We're going to get it taken apart and get the new ones installed. Again, just tapping them in, and then make sure that they seat against that seat. You see it in there. Make sure the bearing seats against that. Be sure and put the spacer in between the two, and put the shaft back in, and everything's good to go. This is the spacer that I was referring to. It goes in between the 2 bearings inside of the housing, and then the spindle shaft goes through the bearings, through the sleeve, and into the other bearing. So that's the way it works. So I am tapping in this bearing, and this is all I've done. It's just kind of gone around it with a hammer, just like that. Get it completely seated with the outside of the housing, but remember we've got the seat on the inside. So then I take the 1/4 inch extension or whatever you have that'll be flat, that you can drive the edge of this bearing, not on the rubber and not in the middle. The edge of this bearing is what you want to drive. So that's what I'm doing, and we'll get it put together. This is the spacer that I was talking about. You can see it's kind of I've just got it set down in there. Once you have this bearing put in and seated completely against the seat that we talked about, you still have a little bit of play in between that sleeve and the bearings. So don't worry about necessarily trying to get it, you know, dead center tight. But what I did was, as I got the bearing close to being seated, then I put the shaft in and made sure that it kind of held the sleeve in place as I tapped it all together. Okay, well, it's all back together. I did have that middle shaft that I had to clean up a little bit with some sandpaper. I had some, I think 400 grit, and I put some 600 on it, and just cleaned up the end of that shaft a little bit, and it slid on the bearings good. To get the belt back on, you have to, I'm gonna try to show you this, but up underneath this pulley here, okay, up underneath that pulley is a 3/4 inch if I get the light in there, get the camera in there. There's a 3/4 inch nut right there. And you put you an open end wrench on that. Okay? Put an open end wrench on it and pull it back toward the back of the mower. And that releases the tension on the belt. And then you just walk it on this pulley here. And everything's good. So, I haven't cranked it up yet, but we're about to do that. And very easily done once I realized exactly how it all went together. I will tell you, and unfortunately, I didn't think of it until the last spindle, but I had this bearing kit, seal and bearing installer, and one of those, this one here fit perfect, and it drove those bearings right in. So I may have messed up that center bearing just a touch. The seal around the bearing, I slipped off and hit it. I don't know if it's going to cause me problems or not, but if you use that bearing driving tool, and I think you can rent them at Discount and AutoZone, places like that, O'Reilly's. I think they rent those, but I had bought it for another project and forgot I had it. So anyway, that makes it a lot easier to drive those bearings if you have that. Again, I'm not a videographer. I know this is probably not the best way to secure the mower while I'm working on it, but it's what I have and it's what I do. I'm not telling you that this is what you should do, but we have completed the job, and we'll hear what it sounds like. Okay, everything worked great. I did buy a new belt to put on it, and it was not correct. So don't make that mistake that I did. 041402200 is not the correct belt. It's about 1.5 feet too short. Okay, so tools you're gonna need for the job. Again, I wouldn't try to do it without an impact. It's hard to back up the bolts and all. The impact is turning so fast that it pulls the bolts off without holding anything. You're gonna need that. So you're gonna need a 9/16 socket and a 9/16 socket on a ratchet to take off the 4 bolts that hold the spindle onto the deck. You're going to need a 1/2 inch socket. I just used a 1/4 inch drive to remove the covers that are over the belt and the pulleys on both sides. You're going to need a 15/16 socket to take off the blade, and you're going to need a 3/4 socket to take off the nut on the top that holds the pulley onto the spindle. And then, as you saw at the last video, in order to put the belt back on, a 3/4 inch wrench that would allow you to get up underneath that pulley and pull that bolt so that you can release the tension to slip the belt onto the pulley. So those are the things you're going to need. It didn't really take that long. It probably took me 2.5 hours to do the job, and now I could probably do it in an hour. Very simple. Once you get the belt off and the 2 covers, it's just 4 bolts on each of the spindles. Pull them out, drive out the old bearings, and again, if you use that bearing driver and installer that I showed you earlier, you will have an easier way to make it work. But you will need, I used a 1/4 inch extension to drive out the bearings, but you will need some way to do that, or an access to a press to drive the bearings out. The bearing installer works great to put them back in, but you will need that some type of tool to drive those out along with a hammer. So that's what you need. I hope this helps. Again, I'm not a videographer. I'm not here to make money or whatever. I'm just trying to show. I didn't see a whole lot of things about rebuilding spindles. I saw replacing spindles, but not rebuilding them. So I just wanted to put a video out there, and I hope it helps. Thanks.